Hello, and thank you for joining us for the webinar. Today, we are going to talk about three major things. The first one is going to be the roots of the organization, so you can get a better idea of why we started and where we are. Next, we're going to talk about what it means to be an urban school teacher and what it means to work in the city of Boston. And finally, we are going to talk about logistics. About the program, how the year works, tuition, AmeriCorps, health insurance, all that stuff. Back in 2003, Jesse Solomon, who started BTR, was having conversations with Mr. Tom Payzant, who at the time was the superintendent of Boston Public Schools. Jesse continues to be the director of Boston Teacher Residency, and Tom currently works at the Harvard School of Education. A little bit about Jesse. He went to MIT, studied math, went to Harvard School of Education. He always knew he was going to teach, and taught in Boston and Cambridge for a decade. He also helped to start a school called City on the Hill Charter School, and they had done a really great job getting the word out about this school when they began. And because of that, they were able to recruit really talented teachers, people who were passionate about urban school teaching, passionate about their content, and really, really knew their content. But upon starting the school, they found the same thing that Jesse had been observing for years. And that was this: people wanted to teach. People had great skills in terms of their content, but they still didn't know how to teach that content and relay it to students, which meant that they were spending their first year of teaching figuring out how to do the job. And oftentimes that was on the backs of students. The fact of the matter was that Black and Latino students in Boston didn't have the time to have somebody learning how to do this important work. It also wasn't working well for teachers who were working incredibly hard to try and teach the students in front of them, but didn't feel like they had been prepared enough to do so, or they didn't feel supported enough to do so either. So when BTR finally got started, the concepts that Jesse came up with were relatively simple. The first one was that the learning of how to teach actually had to happen in schools, not in a lecture hall. The second concept was that there needed to be a bridge between theory and practice. You needed to learn the theory of teaching, but then you needed an immediate space to be able to exercise that theory and see how it really looks in action. Again, that has to happen at schools. The next concept was that BTR had to be an affordable route. If you were somebody who was the perfect person to do this work, money should not be a barrier to prevent you from doing so. So it's always been a major goal for us to make our program as affordable as possible. And finally, the fourth pillar, if you will, of the program is that it needs to have a cohort model. In order to really stay doing this work, you need to have a strong support system that keeps you teaching. You might ask why it's called a residency. If you were to Google residency teacher prep programs, you would find over 20 now. But when we started 10 years ago, we were actually the first residency. We coined the term. And, basically it is modeled after a doctor residency. If you or your child were sick, then you would most likely um, want to be seen by somebody who had seen patients before if you went to the emergency room. And the idea is that if you are going to be in charge of teaching students, you should have had a bunch of practical experience with students before you are in charge of them solely. And so really it is based off of a residency model. The way that it works is you start your program at BTR in July. For July and August, you are a full-time student taking coursework all day, every day. And then in September, you get placed with somebody called your collaborating teacher, your mentor, if you will. And your mentor is the person who is overseeing your practice. You are in the classroom with them every day and you're responsible for the students in front of you, but you are not solely responsible. Your collaborating teacher, your mentor, is there to provide support, to push you when you need a little bit of encouragement, to maybe stop you before you make a mistake. And it's a gradual release of responsibility. So maybe in the beginning of the school year in September, by the end of September, maybe you're only in charge of 5 or 10% of the load. Maybe you're leading some transitions. If you're a history teacher, maybe you're doing some current events every day with your students. If you're an elementary school teacher, maybe you're doing some mental math every day and maybe a read aloud a couple days a week, and maybe you're leading some transitions. But the idea is that by the end of June, you are really in charge of 50% of the work. This doesn't mean that when you're teaching, your mentor or collaborating teacher is off to a long lunch break. Instead, it means that they're in the back giving you feedback, or maybe they're in the front of the room right next to you teaching alongside of you. Or maybe you've decided that you want to break the class up into 2 separate groups and that you'll be working with one small group and your mentor teacher will be working with the other. But the idea is that you are in a supportive environment where somebody's overseeing your practice and slowly giving you more responsibility so that when it comes time for you to have your own classroom, you know exactly what you should be doing. BTR is an innovative program. It is a direct feeder into the Boston Public Schools. We are a partner with BPS. Most BPS principals want to hire BTR grads. We have over 350 graduates who are currently teaching in Boston Public Schools. Our first cohort graduated with their master's degree from BTR in 2004. And we are really a movement. We are committed to providing a first-in-class education to the children of Boston. Here at BTR, we talk about this a lot. If there's any city that can be the first one to provide a high-quality public education to all the students, it's Boston. We are a city with many resources, and we are a city with some of the highest institutions of higher ed in the world. Here is some quick information about Boston Public Schools that may or may not surprise you. We have 135 schools with 56,340 students hailing from over 100 countries. 74% of our students receive free or reduced lunch. 21% of BPS students have been diagnosed with a learning disability. And while 87% of our students are people of color, 38% of our teachers are people of color. 38% of our children do not speak English as their first language. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges of the past and the present in terms of recruiting and keeping teachers. You know, back many years ago, Boston had a human capital problem. We had over 600 job openings every year. We had over 6,000 people applying for those jobs, and we still couldn't get them filled by the right people. And so we're still continuing to address some of these challenges. So the first one is teacher diversity, which we talked about a little bit when we looked at the snapshot of Boston. We are committed to getting a diverse teaching force that really represents students. And we mean diversity in every step of the way. One thing that we're very proud of is that over 50% of BTR residents are people of color. Another thing is teacher retention. We want to get good teachers in, and we want to keep them. At BTR, we feel pretty good about our numbers. Currently, over 50% of urban school teachers in the nation quit in the first 3 years. BTR's retention rate is 80%. 80% of teachers have stayed teaching, and over 90% have actually stayed in education. BTR is also committed to recruiting teachers in high-need areas. We train teachers in all the major core subject areas, but we really need teachers to fill science and math roles. Right now, even President Obama is making a call for 100,000 STEM teachers in the next 10 years. When he says STEM, he's talking about science, technology, engineering, and math. In order for us to compete in the world, we need to be doing a better job of training our students in science and math, and we need to have more skilled teachers. We are also looking for people to teach English as a second language and special education. One of the really special things about Boston Teacher Residency is that every single person who does the program gets dual certified. First, you choose the content area you want to teach, be it history, middle school math, high school English, or elementary school, or maybe science. Then, you also choose a second certification. You have two choices, English as a second language or special education. In 13 months, you'll get licensed to teach in your content area. You'll have a master's degree and you'll find a job as a classroom teacher. And then, during that 13 months, you'll also have taken your classes to get your second certification, but only half your classes. During your first year as a classroom teacher, when you are done with your master's, you will take about a class a week to finish your second license in either special ed or English as a second language. One important thing to understand when looking at this as a feasible option for you is that BTR is not a program that is going to teach you your content. If you're coming in to teach middle school math, you need to know middle school math. What we are going to do is teach you how to relay that content to students. And we've defined 5 buckets of what we think good teaching looks like, and this will give you a sense of what you're going to learn with your 13 months at BTR. The first thing that we think is necessary is that for people to know their content, but that's not enough. They have to know how students are going to interact with that content. And that's what we're going to teach you here at BTR. It's one thing to know the periodic table in and out, but to figure out how to get the 13-year-old boy who's thinking about a whole host of other things in front of you, to really understand that and to get it and be excited about it, that's the work.